Alright guys, welcome back to Formula 1 News. Normal programming is resumed here in Suzuka with Max Verstappen topping the timesheets and going purple basically everywhere today as George Russell in a struggling Mercedes says that from his perspective, this TD did not affect Red Bull. Back on the normal pace today it seems. Will that be the case for the rest of the weekends? Will Verstappen win every race from now to the end of the season? Very much enjoyed your thoughts in the comments below. Hit the like button if you enjoy. Subscribe if you're new as always. Now speaking of Max Verstappen, the stewards have confirmed after all the drama of the last few days as to exactly why he didn't get a penalty for impeding Tsunoda and for blocking the end of the pit lane in Singapore. Got 2 reprimands, no penalties. It was confusing to everyone, not least Red Bull themselves, who I think were quite surprised at this as well. Now, the stewards have actually confirmed to the teams they made a mistake on this. And you've got to wonder, how? Why? You know, like, apparently they should have given penalties to both Verstappen and Logan Sargent. One of the stewards in the Singapore Grand Prix admitted in a meeting with team managers at Suzuka that Verstappen should have had a grid drop for the Yuki incident at least, and potentially a second drop for the pit lane instance. And even this was said that the ruling body has confirmed that he should have received 2 standard 3-place grid penalties, 1 for each offence, that would have dropped him from 11th to 17th. So, you know, how do they get this wrong? How do they just make this mistake a little bit coincidental? And look, it doesn't matter in the grand scheme of things. Verstappen's winning the championship, Red Bull are winning the Constructors, but imagine there was actually a battle here, and that P5 for Verstappen where he ended up was actually pivotal in terms of championship results, and he should have, I mean, they're basically admitting he should have started 17th. He started 11th with no penalties. I don't know how that happens. Incompetence, intentional. You guys have been giving your thoughts on that in the comments below the last few days. Now, speaking of Red Bull, it's now apparently going to be confirmed, like tomorrow or something, that Ricciardo and Tsunoda, maybe even today, I don't know, are going to be the drivers for next year's AlphaTauri. Liam Lawson will be out of a seat. We've talked about some of the rumours as to why and where Lawson might go as a result, but apparently he's just going to become the Red Bull reserve yet again, a position that he's not going to be happy with at all, but he'll have at least a couple more races to prove himself. The belief is that Ricciardo will not be back until probably Austin, so they'll be here in Suzuka and then Qatar before Ricciardo returns. Now, Red Bull have brought no tech upgrades this weekend. There's a few things teams are bringing. Mercedes have brought that rear wing end plate tweak we saw yesterday. Ferrari with a new floor, which seems to be working decently well for them so far. And also Red Bull are slapping new engines in both cars. They seem hell-bent on trying to ensure they get, you know, you can say revenge for the loss in Singapore, but, you know, they're not really getting revenge on anyone. It's more so, you know, frustrations they couldn't win every race, and they're taking it out on the competition because they've slapped a new engine in both cars. And as always, Max, at least around a circuit like this, Max is by far the fastest through the corners and is fastest on the straight, which is a pretty good combination to have. So here's Max Verstappen in FP1. I think this might have actually been a shot from FP2, but still, during practice today, and I mean, look, the times speak for themselves. We knew the Red Bull was going to be strong around here. It was unbelievably good around here last year in the hands of Max Verstappen, especially in those wet conditions, and it's the type of circuit that should treat that car really well. The question was, would there be any hangover from last weekend's Singapore Grand Prix with respect to the technical directive, the changes to the flexible wings, but mainly to the flexible floor that potentially Red Bull were getting around TD018 that's now been clapped down upon? Did that affect their understanding of the balance there back in Singapore? Possibly. Will it affect them at some other tracks going forwards that maybe are a bit bumpier, such as Austin? Possibly as well. But a circuit like Suzuka, even if it has affected them, I wouldn't expect to see much evidence of it here. Their car underlying is still unbelievably good. The way they're able to use the ride heights, the way like the rear of the car is just so sticky around those first few corners. That's where the Mercedes was losing so much time, was in the S's in Sector 1. The Red Bull is just so compliant, it's almost outrageous. And yeah, Verstappen was 6/10 away from anybody else. Sainz, Norris, Leclerc, then Yuki Tsunoda. Hopefully he has a good weekend because he's had a tough time the last couple of races, and the Mercedes nowhere to be found. Now, Perez was also a fair bit off the pace. I mean, where is he here? Can we find him? Yeah, P11, 1.4 seconds of Verstappen's pace. Now, they were running the different floor specifications here, and they actually were doing some testing out on this with FlowViz. So Verstappen had the new floor edge situation that they changed for Singapore, but they reverted because it wasn't working for them, and so they had the FlowViz on the car, just trying to test this stuff out. Obviously, obviously that doesn't explain the gap between Max and Checo, but yeah, it was very significant again today. Max seems really on it to try and prove that last weekend was just a fluke, and you know, he seems hell-bent on lapping the entire field, you know, this weekend, and it seems like that's what Red Bull are going to plan to do. We'll get on to some more discussion around the technical directive here in a second. This was Pierre Gasly putting in the wall at the second Degner. Such tricky corners. If you guys have played the F1 game, you'll know that that second Degner corner is so challenging. Like, you can lock up a little bit, or if you do run wide over the curb, your car spins around, it's a nightmare. And yeah, a lot of drivers had issues with that corner, as they usually do in that curb today. This is a weird one, though, because Gasly locked up coming into Degner and just kind of slid off the track quite gracefully, and it looked like he was gonna no problem, but then he glid against the wall, and all of a sudden, the front left suspension just snapped in half. So, yeah, that's a bit of a tricky job for the boys to repair. But another, you know, Alpine just can't have a normal weekend, can they? It's just built into these guys. So, FP2, it was pretty similar. Teams were putting on a bit more pace here. Verstappen was quickest again by 0.3, and was definitely quickest in race runs. It is going to be interesting to see what happens on this, the test tyre. Now, obviously, a lot of the running here was on softs, and clearly, again, Verstappen is way clear. And actually, Verstappen's advantage in Sector 1 is nigh on ridiculous. Again, Perez was a second off the pace. The two Mercedes were shocking. George Russell found a bit of pace at the ends. Hamilton was way down again. He was like 2 seconds down on FP1, was over a second down in FP2, and a lot of that is just lack of confidence in the rear of the car, I believe, especially going through Sector 1, but even in the rest of the lap as well. That Mercedes, there's been a couple of weekends last year where Mercedes had a terrible Friday, and sometimes they turned it around, such as Hungary 2022. Sometimes they didn't. And this is one of the first, like, just terrible Fridays Mercedes have had. I mean, last weekend, Hamilton was saying it was the best Friday that had all year in Singapore. And that is not the case here. So lots of work for poor old Mick Schumacher to do on the simulator overnight as to what they're going to try and do. Because Ferrari are looking like the, you know, likely team right now to get P2 in the Constructors. They've obviously found something over the last few races. The belief is that it's something to do with the way they're setting up their car. Yes, they brought some upgrades and they've got a new floor here, but it seems like the Ferrari works better when it's set up for a bit more understeer. And the Ferrari just seems to perform better in those conditions. Now, if you set your car up for understeer, that favours Sainz's driving style over Leclerc's, who prefers a bit more oversteer baked in. But, you know, that's just something Leclerc has to adapt to right now, and probably one of the key reasons why, well, Sainz has been getting the better of Charles over the last couple of races. These were the sector times as well, and we can see the Red Bull, I mean, it's just insane how good it is in that first sector, especially with Verstappen at the helm. But yeah, 2.5 tenths up on McLaren in just the first sector, 4 tenths up on Ferrari, 6 tenths up on Hamilton and Russell. They both were like 6 tenths down, but Russell could keep it closer to Red Bull in the rest of the lap than Hamilton could. But yeah, lots of thoughts for them to have. I mean, Mercedes barely even faster than the Haas in sector 1, and even faster than the Williams, despite the Williams being fastest in sector 3, because, you know, they got that juicy straight line speed, of course, with no DRS open, because it's a very slippery car. The Ferrari was the fastest, though, by 2 tenths in sector 2, so that is a little bit interesting. And on an ideal lap, the Ferrari would only have been 2 tenths down on Max Verstappen. So, you know, maybe there's something to be said for the fight for pole, but realistically, in race trim, it's not even going to be close, based on the data that we have here from the Red Bull. Now, this was done on the test tyre, which is apparently next year's, well, according to what is being said, it's next year's medium, so it's going to be a fast tyre, probably faster than this year's tyre, which probably says that Verstappen's pace in hand on Perez is partly because of the tyre that he was running is just faster than the medium that others are on. But still, I mean, Verstappen's pace was immense. He was 5 tenths up on his average lap time here compared to Leclerc. Perez was about the same speed, then Sainz, then Stroll. And Hamilton and Russell were roughly a second down a lap on what Verstappen was doing. So put that over a race, you know, Verstappen's winning margin is going to be pretty substantial here, of course. Not on those test tyres, though, but on the mediums. But still, the Mercedes was, compared to their trim in, well, compared to their qualifying trim, was maybe a little bit better here relative to their competition, but they're still half a second down, and it feels like it's a battle for Ferrari, McLaren, and Mercedes, and even the other contenders in the mix as well, such as Alonso, to get the podium, because it feels like Red Bull are going to be back where they were again, like they were a couple of weeks ago. Verstappen, of course, very happy about this. He was saying, oh, from lap 1, the car was enjoyable to drive, and yeah, if they did lack understanding of balance based on the changes in the technical directive, we didn't see any evidence of that today, and that's what the Mercedes boys are saying. Hamilton said that if the Red Bull doesn't win by 30 seconds around here, something is up. Like, something's wrong, and the technical directive has affected them, because the car should be insanely good around here. But it seems like Hamilton's prediction might well come true, and who knows if Max is going to try and put more than 30 seconds on the rest of the field as it stands. Now, Mercedes have commented on themselves and on Red Bull, and Andrew Chauvelin says both struggle with the car, especially lack of grip and balance of the car. We made some changes. George found a bit more time, but it wasn't really happening. You know, can't underestimate the amount of work they've got to do over the rest of the weekend. Hamilton said he found it difficult to find the right balance, struggle with confidence in the car, obviously long way off the timing sheets. And Russell says that the Red Bulls are back to their normal pace. They've been exceptionally quick today, which is basically saying the TD hasn't done anything to affect them. Now, as I say, maybe there's other circuits, such as if they're a bit bumpier, that might affect the Red Bull. But yeah, the likelihood is that the technical directive potential changes it made for them at Singapore don't really seem to have manifested here, at least so far on the weekends. And it seems like, yeah, again, the teams are admitting that it's too far gone, you know, and there isn't really any tracks like Singapore from now to the end of the season, so the chances of winning again for any other team have potentially gone out the window there in Singapore. Ferrari got the win, Mercedes, and I'm sure Russell feels like, and Hamilton especially, will feel like they could have got the win. Norris might feel that as well to some degree, and I'm sure they're especially feeling it now, because with the way Verstappen was driving today and the way the Red Bull looked today, it's probably going to be over for the rest of the season for these teams, unless there's, you know, extenuating circumstances. But yeah, it doesn't seem like the technical directive has done much. George Russell basically admits it and says that right now they're half a second behind the Ferrari and Lando. Doesn't mention Piastri, even though Piastri is definitely in a position to out-qualify the Mercedes. This is an interesting observation, though, that the tyre degradation, according to Russell, is looking very high, and that, of course, will massively affect the, well, how the stints go. The McLaren in the race simulations looked pretty good in terms of tyre deg, better than some of the other competitors. So, you know, that could just be a one-off, we don't really know, but that's one to look for, because the Ferrari, the tyre degradation of that car is still a bit of a question mark, and I think Sainz had to do a lot of management in that race in Singapore to ensure that those tyres got to the end of the Grand Prix. A couple of other things. There was a statement here from Christian Horner throwing some shade the way at Toto Wolff, saying that if we can close out these titles at the next 2 races, I know nobody looks at Wikipedia these days, but it's an achievement we'll be very proud of. The thing is, though, that they'll probably win the Constructors here in Japan. The drivers cannot be won here in Japan, I think, by Verstappen, but the likelihood is it will be won by Verstappen in the Qatar sprint race, which is just going to be so underwhelming, you know what I mean? He's probably going to win the sprint in Qatar and then, you know, win the championship there, and it's like, well, it's not even Sunday yet, you know? It's going to feel a little bit strange, to be honest. That's probably what's going to happen, but yeah, not exactly guaranteed right now. But very much interested in your thoughts in the comments below. Hit the like button if you enjoyed, subscribe if you're new, take care, and I'll see you next time.